That is, if I were to say the physical effects of the fall on you, right? You would observe very, very quickly, well, we get old and we die. And that's if we're blessed, right? There's obvious physical effects, right? If I were to say to you, well, what are the spiritual effects? You might wisely observe, well, our relationship with God was broken and now we only live in terms of rebellion against Him. And again, this is, apart from being regenerated, right? And you'd be right. Well, if I were to ask you, well, what do the effects of the fall look like on your soul? You might go, and I suspect you'd probably work out some of them. You probably get a few of them right here and there. But when we're talking about noetic effects, what we mean by that is the effects of the fall on the faculties of the immaterial part of our being. Remember, mankind is a two-part being, body and soul. Okay? I know there are some tripartites and they misunderstand what Scripture's teaching there, and that's okay. All right? It's body and soul is the being of man, and the immaterial part we call the soul. It has faculties. It has these natural capacities, these natural functioning abilities that are affected by the fall. Now, immediately, if I said the mental effects, you might simply go, well, yeah, retardation. Degrees of the ability of the brain to work, right? I learned something interesting about IQ. You can ask me about that. I'm inclined to almost completely jettison the whole IQ spectrum of looking at things as a result of the study I did. But you could, just for the sake of the discussion here, you could sit there and go higher IQ, lower IQ, some IQ so low as to have social deficiencies, retardation, and I would go, well, yeah, but is that all it is? And in particular, when we're talking about the soul's faculties defects as a result of the fall, we're talking about in order to see things the way they really are, to say that the mental effects of the soul, I'm sorry, I saw my grandkids walk in and I lost focus. The mental effects of the soul are merely measurements of intellectual ability is missing the point. We are in rebellion against God under the fall. That means that we don't understand things the way they really are. It doesn't mean we've lost all ability to understand things. It does mean that we have lost all ability to understand things, to see things the way they really are. Because if we did, then we would repent of our rebellion and seek for a Messiah. All right? But it's not just our mental abilities. It's also our emotional abilities. Do we experience love? Do we experience hate? Yes. Do we experience love and hate the way God experiences love and hate, which was the original intention? No. Does that mean all our love and all our hate is wrong? No. Again, it's some sort of degree measurement. But fundamentally, we cannot love God sufficiently to be saved. Same thing goes with our conscience. Now, you've heard me using the words desire, and this requires a little bit of explanation, right? It's desire because the conscience is that part of our faculties of the soul, which says, which among the options in front of me would make me the most satisfied in my life? Now remember, when we measure what satisfaction in life is by an intellect that's been defected by the fall, by emotions that have been defected by the fall, okay? The measurement of satisfaction that we're going to come up with is not the Bible's, glorifying God through enjoying Him forever. We're not going to come up with that. In fact, we're going to come up with the exact opposite, glorifying self, because I'm the best thing that ever occurred, right? That's just the way it works. And so you have this model of the conscience as the good angel and the bad angel. And that's not accurate. That's not accurate. The conscience is your faculty that chooses what is going to be best to serve your purpose. Your understanding of your purpose is broken. And as a result, your conscience is defective. I mean, even when people do good things, obedience to the moral law, if they do them out of the wrong basis, it's to promote self, it's to protect self, it's to preserve self, it's to prosper self. It's not about for the glory of God. And so our conscience or our desires. And then finally, the will. The will is what then functionally operates, right? In fact, Brennan, hold on a second. It functionally applies everything that we've just learned. And I put together a little drawing early on in hopes that it would help you see this. And it might just be helpful to review that very quickly. Hold on. There it is. Page 2. All the way back to page 2. Now, this is where I put that picture up of Disney's Inside Out. These are all emotions, by the way. They're not thinking and feeling, not thinking and desiring and choices. It's literally a movie that says we're controlled by our emotions. How do we make sure our emotions work properly? So this is very common for all of us. We haven't been completely divorced. You guys all know that when someone is legally blind, that doesn't mean it's black. Okay? There are degrees of blackness, if we could say it that way. All right? The narrowing of the ability to see things. Okay? So when Jesus heals that man the first time who's blind and he says, I see men walking around like trees. Right? I suspect when we get there, we're going to find out that that's not a partial healing. That's just not a healing. For some reason, he wasn't healed at that point. Jesus needed to heal him again. He still was blind, in other words. I mean, if he was completely black blind, right, how would he know what men look like, let alone what trees look like? I see men walking around like trees. Okay? So, the point is this. When we talk about blindness of the soul, we're not saying we're completely divorced. And so Disney can pick up on some true things, but they don't understand them properly. They don't see them the way God sees them, right? I know some people don't like the world view language. I tried adopting ontological outlook, and that's a lame attempt at someone who's not a scholar to try and come up with something that can't be challenged, okay? So at this point, I'm back to worldview, all right? It's just the way you see the world and how much does it line up with the way Jesus sees them. You may have seen some images one time where it's, two images moving together and moving together and moving together and moving together, and then all of a sudden, it comes into focus. That's what our eyes do. If you've only got one eye, your focus on things, you're not seeing the whole thing, right? Okay, well, that's what we're talking about. Getting saved does not perfect our faculties. It frees them from the defects, but actually them functioning now perfectly waits for glorification. So this little diagram here, all right, the emotions, the intellect, the desires, the will, those are all in the soul, which is united with the body, and then it interacts with the world. That's what we're talking about, okay? Any questions about this? Most of you, it's review. I just want to make sure that we cover it. Brandon, you can go to page 34 now.
It's Chris now.
What?
Just letting you know it's Chris now.
Chris, now you can go to 34. Brandon, you can tell Chris to go to 34.
Go back. It's okay, yeah, I'll tell you when to stop. No, the other way. Sorry. Stop.
Brandon, you didn't train him
Now,
right, did you?
forward a teeny bit. One more, 2, 3, one more. You're good.
Yeah, Chris, the page number's at the bottom, and sometimes it's hard to see till you get just there, okay? So these screens are designed to be as full as possible. All right, and so we've been going over internal examples, all right? Let me just read them. I'm not going to ask you to go back to it. We have enmity against God and his law. It's not just hate, it's we turn him into an enemy. Right? We have self-deceiving love of moral depravity. We have a willing suppression of truth that may be known. we have futility in assessing reality from general revelation. General revelation is the information available to anyone from what they can use their five senses to find. We invent false religions. We experience the hardening of the mind and our conscience. And we live in a state of prideful alternity, excuse me. It's actually true. Prideful autonomy, all right? Remember what Satan said to Adam and Eve, right? Your eyes will be opened, you will be like God, knowing good and evil. Prideful autonomy. So in every single one of those, I gave a number of verses to show you this is what the Bible is teaching. If you want the notes, you can always ask. All right, so we're now ready to say, what does this look like? So in the soul, there's this defecting to various degrees. Our intellect is not working well, our emotions are not working well, our desires are not working well, and our will is not working well, right? And then this thing is then enacted in the body, and it doesn't work well either, okay? And well is a relative term, okay, which in this case is a significant understatement, all right? So one of the external examples is there is a universal idolatry, a false religion. Everyone creates a false religion. Now, some of us have learned and heard from others about how Romans chapter 1, it presumes that you're going to worship, but under the fall, you reject worship of the Creator, even though He may be known, and you worship the creation itself, right? And the whole point there is that there's built-in necessity to man's creation. He was created to have a relationship with God as creature to creator, okay? And their only word that's adequate there is worship. And we can throw praise and service and all these other things that are expressive of the category of what we mean by worship. But we will replace. And so here we are at the Areopagus in Athens. This is the market, okay? This is, this is East Chase Mall. I mean, we've replaced our open markets with these various things, right? I know it's not a mall; it's an open mall, right? Okay. Most of us who grew up on, going inside a mall, right? Well, that's an Areopagus, right? Okay. Some of you are going, what about the curb market? Well, that's an Areopagus, all right? We have all different varieties, but it's where everyone goes to interact on a commercial basis, and then social things happen. So you can go skating. Is that at Eastdale still? Do they have the ice skating rink still at Eastdale? Okay, got rid of it? Okay. You can go see movies. You can sit down and have a meal, okay? You bring 5 friends, and each of you can go buy meals at 5 different cuisines and sit down together and eat your meal and talk, right? So it's a location where all these different things of ordinary life are taking place, right? Well, in their Areopagus, they filled it with statues that were reflective of various gods that were honored. Addie and I on Friday night were out at Pike Road, and we're in the south of Pike Road, where the old Ace hardware store is. It's now a farm feed store, which is what it always was, right? They just got rid of the Ace stuff, and love that store. And we're driving by an old abandoned church on this one side that's no longer abandoned. I don't know if it was Baptist or Methodist. I'm inclined to think it was a Methodist church, but long before the Methodists had problems, it had been closed, and it's the Hindu temple. And so as we were driving by, I said to Addie, I said, so you remember, honey, that each day of the year they worship a different Hindu god? She's like, yeah. And then I extrapolated, and I said, and they've been doing that for thousands of years, and they haven't come close to giving one day to each god in the Hindu pantheon. They haven't come close to worshiping every single god in the Hindu pantheon. Some of you are going, what? The best guesstimate is that they have 1 million with a plus sign on the end. And ... meaning it doesn't end. No one can tell how many gods, because the nature of the religion just constantly creates new gods, right? Now, these are not gods the way the Lord is, right? but they're not to be considered demigods. They're in their own rights to be considered worthy of worship, and that's what's going on here in Athens, right? And the Greeks, if you study Greek philosophy, you realize how wise they were. Starting in about the 600s BC, they were, this is the nature of reality. And then some other smart guy would come along and go, well, what about this? And then they'd come up, all right, this is the nature of reality. And then some other smart guy would come up and go, well, what about this? All right, one of my favorites is, the river. It's just the river. It doesn't change. And then one smart guy, he walked up with his bare feet and he put his foot in there and he said, it changed now. And he wasn't talking about his foot in the river. He was talking about the different water flowing over his toes. There's constant change in the river. All right? The whole issue of the one versus the many. Some of you have learned the Trinity is the explanation of that. Okay? Unity and diversity. How do you explain them? Both are necessary for a real creation. How do you explain all that? Well, all of that just to simply observe, these Greeks got real smart. And in their suppositions, as they began to expand, as they became the intellectual resource for the Roman Empire continued to expand. Every time they came in contact with a new enemy, that hopefully would become a new friend. Well, look at their gods. Oh, look at their gods. Okay. And so they would just put up another statue. And then they realized, I bet there's a God out there that no one has ever discovered. He might be mad if we don't worship him. All right? And some feminists said, what do you mean he? All right, I'm joking. Okay? And they built a statue to the unknown God. Now, all of that to just simply observe. Okay? You might want to sit there and go, universal idolatry, false religion. Well, what about atheists? Okay? Aside from the fact that intellectually there's no such thing as an honest atheist. They're agnostics. Aside from that, okay? Well, what are they worshiping? Richard Dawkins, one of the four horsemen of the atheism, New Atheism. I love his explanation. You need three universal things that must have always existed and must be perfect in their existence. Time, matter, and chance. Three things? Yeah, if you have all three of those, and then of course billions of years within time, and of course plenty of matter, and then of course plenty of randomized chance, well then you can come up with everything we see. Some of you know about the experiment. It's a philosophical argument about, how long will it take a monkey sitting in front of a typewriter to type out one of Shakespeare's sonnets? Eventually, you give him enough time, he can come up with it, right? So, practically speaking, he ain't never going to do it, right? Well, the whole point here of Richard Dawkins is, so you have three universal things that are perfect in nature and control, they determine the shape and experience of everything else. You've just assigned these three things godlike characteristics. It's interesting, you have three, why not five? Why not one? All right? All of that just to simply observe. I know it's not proof, okay? But it's yet another piece of evidence that mankind, even at his most anti-God, replaces him with different versions of God. So universal idolatry, false religion, is a huge one. Sophisticated, unbelieving philosophies. Now, again, the attempt here is to deny God as the creator, because if you can deny God as the creator, you don't owe him anything. And then you can say that the reason you feel guilt and shame is because other people are mean. Now, it might be that part of your guilt and shame is because other people are mean. That happens. But there's a baseline of guilt and shame that has nothing to do with other people. It has to do with the God in whose image you've been created in, and whom you owe a perfect reflection of his created glory. And you're not going to give it. You're in rebellion. And so what do? You come up with some sort of sophisticated, unbelieving philosophy to explain away the characteristics on the inside and on the outside. Look at the amazing structure of the Grand Canyon. And we know that could form in what, a week or two? I mean, you go to the, is it the Snake River Canyon at, up in Washington State, where they had the explosion. Yeah, I think it's Snake River Canyon, but literally the mountain exploded, and like 1981, I think it was in the summer, and within 1 or 2 days, because of the rain and everything that came with it, they literally had liquid mud that carved out a giant canyon near this mountain that blew up, volcano. And elastic flow, who could have known, right? And so the Grand Canyon, oh no, it was formed over 1 million years of trickling water on one rock. Well, why not a catastrophe over, how long did it rain for? 40. Yeah, remember that number 40, it's important, right? Surely that could have created the Grand Canyon. Surely that could have created the Grand Canyon, because the best guesstimates of even the unbelievers is that most of the West was actually a giant interior harbor, bay, kind of like what we have at the Bay of Hudson, a big body of water. Okay, where's that sucker going to drain to? Wherever the Colorado River goes to. That would be the Baja, right?
There's actually evidence there were 3 huge lakes, state-sized lakes.
There we go.
And there was a tectonic event that caused a fracture near the eastern edge of where the Grand Canyon is now. As that caused one lake to drain, which relieved the pressure from the next lake, which drained, which relieved the pressure from the other lake, which drained. And it probably cut the Grand Canyon in about a week.
So why not the flood? Right? So the reason I'm bringing all this up is that when we talk about sophisticated, unbelieving philosophies, okay, intellectually, what is the greatest Western sophisticated, unbelieving philosophy ever? Came into existence in the 1700s, was established its crown rights in the 1800s across Western civilization.
Evolution.
No. Evolution was was an expression of what? The Enlightenment. Man's rational abilities are such that he can determine the nature of everything. It is a fundamental denial of any defect in the soul's faculties. By sheer reason alone, we can figure everything out. All right, next page. Ding! Page 35. Plagiarizing ethics and law systems. Now, does anyone want to guess why I say plagiarizing?
Because God's the original author.
There you go. Right. The 10 Commandments are the original moral law written on all of our hearts in nature. So if we're going to come up with a moral law code, right? I mean, if you've ever talked to someone who buys into this, there is no God. Well, then why is murder wrong? It becomes merely utilitarian. All right, a guy named John Stuart Mills was a big guy in that in 1800s in England. It's what's best for the most. Okay, and every time I hear that, I go, the Kobayashi Maru scenario. Garrett, you know what I mean, don't you? No? Anyone know what I mean when I say the Kobayashi?
Star Trek.
That's right, it's from a Star Trek movie. Right? It's the second one, right? Spock becomes the Messiah. For lack of you who are paying attention to the Star Trek movies. Yeah, he gives his life for others, and then in the third movie, what happens? He's reborn. So, you know. But the Kobayashi Maru scenario, he literally dies. The benefits to the many outweigh the benefits to the few. and he gives his life so everyone else can survive. Well, you're going to come up with that on your own? Well, yes, evolution might say, because it's important that the race survive. You'll hear some people who have thought about this and have lived by it, and they're inveterate self-deceivers. They keep lying to themselves. Well, it's important for me to live the most valuable ethical life. Yeah, I know. The Christian code is a good example of it, even though they're hypocrites. I'm going to do it perfectly. You're on your third wife. Well, that's not my fault. Right? Your kids won't have anything to do with you. That's beside the point. Okay?
Then you're crying on your deathbed.
And, well, see, that's just the point about self-deception. If they weren't so self-deceiving, they would end up where Nietzsche did. Anyone remember where Nietzsche ended up?
Nihilism.
Well, he created nihilism, and then he listened to it. He died insane. Okay? So, and I say self-deceiving because at least Nietzsche was being honest to the point of his own death. Right? Not by his own hand, he just went insane. Right? So they have to steal from God to create an ethical system and then a law system. I mean, we call it the Judeo-Christian heritage, not because Roman law is not in there. Not because Roman law didn't learn from Greek city-state situations. Not because none of those things didn't learn from Persia or Babylon or the, dare I say it, the Hammurabi Code, which is just a ripoff. Now, it's interesting. It's a ripoff written before Moses wrote down the Ten Commandments. But it's a ripoff based on the Ten Commandments are written on everyone's hearts from nature. Okay? So, plagiarizing ethics and law systems. Building rivals for God's eternal kingdom. If I say the Fifth Reich, does anyone know what I mean by that? The Fifth Reich. Yep. The First Reich ended. The Second Reich ended. The Third Reich ended. The original United Roman Empire. The Byzantine Replacement Empire. The European Holy Roman Empire. What was the Fourth Reich? Nazi Germany. When I say the Fifth Reich, okay, I mean that there's always people who are trying to create a world-spanning empire that doesn't own everything, but effectively controls everything. All right, so Reich just means reign, okay? The reign of an empire. So do you think that's a biblical concept? That the unbelieving world is always trying to construct a utopia, an empire that covers everything, where everything works right and everyone's happy and everyone lives the longest? Does the Bible teach that?
Yeah.
What's it called? A little louder, Garrett. No. That's the truth, the utopia, the fake one, rival one. What's it called?
Garden of Eden?
No. Revelation 17 and 18. Babylon. There you go. Okay? Keep babbling on and eventually you'll get to Babylon. Okay? Hold on. All right. So Babylon in the Bible is not a literal place as it is a principle that keeps repeating itself. In Daniel, you have how many empires described? 4 until the 5th one comes, which is the universal empire, the kingdom of God, Jesus Christ, right? Okay? But these fake rival ones, it's a continual thing. And it's all based on the noetic effects. They're still Tower of Babel builders. Right? Sean?
I feel like this is relevant. Satan.
Completely irrelevant, never mind.
Oh, okay. All right.
Just kidding, go ahead.
Satan's basically, until Jesus comes back, though, all the Reichs are Satan's Reich.
Under the rebellion that Satan instituted, he usurped the crown rights of Adam. And under the usage of God in this period of time, they're called the kingdoms of power, okay? They are still serving Satan's interest. Now, go back to the book of Job. Was torturing Job in Satan's interest? Yes. And who was Satan serving? Wait a minute, if he's in charge, he's not serving, he's serving himself, right? Well, what was the result in Job's life? Sanctification. Deep, abiding, lasting. There's going to be a few lines in heaven. One of them is going to be that line up in front of Adam, where you're going to walk up to him and you're going to, you dummy.
The long line.
And then he's going to say, okay, let me return the favor, because you would have done it too, right? But there's going to be another long line, and it's going to be in front of Job. And it's going to be, thank you that you went through all that so I didn't have to. I learned from your lessons. All right? That's the book of Job. And the point here is that Satan is still Jesus' servant, doing Jesus' will.
He just thinks he is.
Yeah. Well,
Talk about self-deception.
self-deception. There you go. Okay? We're not talking about the noetic effects on the demons, but there is a corollary there. Okay? All right? Rejection of natural and created order in human relations. Now, this is, I hate to say it, but in a sense, Sodom and Gomorrah are given to us as an example of late stage noetic defects in a society. Okay? Here are a bunch of men on a Friday night. All right? That old pop song in the 60s, I got my money, and how does the song go? Another Saturday night and I ain't got nobody. I got my money 'cause I just got paid. How I wish I had some chick to talk to. I'm in an awful way. Okay? Come on, everyone applaud. That was, Lex back there is going, let me get my guitar, Reed.
The rack of Reed.
So, all right, well, that's late stage. You got a bunch of men on a Friday night. They're bored. So what do? Well, they do their intoxicants. Alcohol, maybe some drugs. We don't have any record of their drugs, but alcohol is actually the universal intoxicant. And they saw some good-looking chicks earlier that day. And they don't want to talk to them. And they ain't actually chicks. Okay? They're angels who they think are men. And they want to, if I could use a language from the British, they want to bugger them. They want to sodomize them. That's where we get that word from. Okay? I mean, it doesn't get much worse than that. Right? And that's, the scriptures make it clear. Sodom and Gomorrah are an example to us of what happens when a civilization has reached the point of God saying no more. He rains down destruction on them. And it becomes a model of what's going to happen to the last Babylon. But it's also modeled in every other single culture that went the way of Babylon. They all ended in destruction. All right? Who wrote that? Who wrote that poem about the guy whose statue is covered in Asmodeus? Yes. Is that Rudyard Kipling? Shelley. Yes, Shelley. Yeah, Blake Shelley? Percy. Yes. He was married to some very important woman who was much better at him. She wrote Frankenstein and the Last Man, which has been turned into two stupid movies. Charlton Heston did one, William Smith did the other. Okay. All right. Yeah, very interesting. She wrote some good stuff. Right. But her husband was a classic British poet, and he wrote this wonderful poem, Ozymandias. Yeah, and Britain in the 1800s is like the other Western civilization empires. They're digging up the Middle East, and they're finding all sorts of amazing stuff about buried, abandoned, forgotten empires. And here they find this giant statue carved in stone. You should look up this statue of Ramses that Egypt has finally restored as much as they could. Okay? It's huge! Really huge. And that's what this is. And on the pedestal, the base, It has a, I am this, I am great, I rule over everything, da 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 da. And his eternal reign is buried in the dust of history, and that's the point of the poem. All right, Shelley was challenging the arrogance of the British Empire, first world-spanning empire on which it could actually be said the sun never set. Every single hour of every single day, that sun was shining on some part of the British Empire. That's a huge accomplishment. Okay? All right, so the rejection of natural created order in humans' relations, you end up with a sodomizing culture. I know some of you are making the comparisons to us and suggesting that we've gone worse. And I'm going to tell you, as I look at the social conditions and the refusal to live by the law of God, that's common both outside the church and within the church, I really am worried. And were it not for the promises that his church will always survive and will always, even in the midst of the worst persecution, thrive. I have friends who have actually researched Latin American countries to see where they might be able to go to escape. All right, and that was, gosh, that was 20 years ago now that they researched it. They still live in Texas. So, not happy, but they still live in Texas, right? This idea of rejecting the natural created order in human relations, this is common. I mean, we could find this in every single era. And it's just degrees of worse or a nightmare. There's nothing good about it, right? So when we talk about this as an effect of the noetic defects, guys, this is socially huge. Everyone's life is affected by this. All right, and I think that's a ding. You can go to page 36 to get the last part of it here. And I am one, having studied this passage for a bit, I am one persuaded that Paul is given an exemplary model of what late stage wickedness looks like. He's not saying that homosexual behavior is the worst imaginable. It might be better to say this: if they had a prom, LGBTQ would never have their own proms. If they had they do, by the way. That was the joke for some of you who don't know that was a joke. Okay? If they had a prom, right, the lesbian would be the king and the homosexual would be the queen. Come on, Reed, that's just normal. We're way past that being exceptional. I mean, we're like 20 years past that being what? Seriously. In America. Their grandparents and their great-grandparents seeking Christ. It's just crazy. They did not see fit to acknowledge God. God gave them up to a debased mind to do what ought not to be done. The L and the G at the LGBTQ is the lead. By the way, there's a reason why it's not GLBTQ. We're reversing things. Women have to come first, right, in their perversion, right? This is serious comparison point, right? And it's not that that's the worst. And that's why they keep adding more letters after it. LGBTQ plus AIAA ... I think that's the one that I saw that was the most controllable, manageable. Some of you have paid attention to, how many different ways can you identify yourself? Some places, 20 or 30 different ways of identifying your sense of your own gender. I mean, it's just madness. It's the madness of men getting drunk and wanting to sodomize angels. That's what it is. And that's what we're looking at. And that I can prove to you that that's exactly what's going on. This is the exemplar. All right? If you see this, you know that everything else is also here. And Paul at that point doesn't go into the rest of the sexual immorality. You want to see that? Go read Leviticus 18. Okay? It's got a good starting list. Okay? Man is creative. That's just an example list, but it's rather thorough. Okay? If you want to go see where this all goes in terms of the breakdown of human relations, well, then you look at the next couple of verses, which lists out the things that God's given them up to. And the list from 29 through 30 is just horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying characteristics of behavior towards others. Hating God and hating others, to summarize the way Titus 3:3 does. That's what the result is. Now, just pay attention to your newspaper. Look at Minneapolis. Right? By the way, you do know that Minneapolis, St. Paul, is the home of John Piper. So much for the salt and light. I'm not blaming him. I'm saying something's going on. Something very serious is going on. And it's all resulted from the external effects of the noetic defects. All right. We're going to stop there. So Chris, next week, page 37. Brennan, you're back up. Next page. Noetic effect illustration. All right. And I'm going to bother you with this one. Okay. So, Reed, you already gave some illustrations right now. I know. Okay. Put it this way. This is like shooting fish in a barrel. And it's a barrel, stocked. All right. It's really easy to come up with illustrations of these things. Are there any questions or comments?
Yes.
Go ahead, Sean.
So, like Sodom and Gomorrah, what is didn't God describe for us the opposite of that? Like, the closer we get to Jesus' kingdom? Or no, it gets worse before it gets there.
Oh, you're looking for the eschatological reflection.
I get it,
Yeah, well, that comes in the series on Revelation that will be starting, hopefully, April. And it'll take us a while to develop there's two different kingdoms of life. Okay?
Cool.
All right. Others? Some of you better ask a question. You wait long enough, and Garrett will ask a question that takes 25 minutes to answer.
Come on, Garrett.
Garrett, go for 30.
All right. Seeing none, let me pray. Lord, thank you so much. All this bad news we've learned, thank you so much that you have recovered your church and that we can increasingly live in the godliness, love for you, and the holiness, loving others, that reflects growing obedience in the Ten Commandments. Not for any other thing but to express the deepening of our love, of our appreciation, about our desire, and our willingness to choose you and only you. Bless these very things because that is your will and you are at work to do these very things. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
All right, guys.